Uh, Welcome everyone to the NDARC resource call today. And I'd like to welcome our presenter today, Calli Thorne. Calli comes to us from the Watford City area. She is a co-owner of Yellowstone River Beef and Triangle M Ranch and Feedlot, as well as a certified keynote speaker, life coach, and personal and professional development trainer with the Maxwell Leadership Team and a certified facilitator for mental health first aid. And if you were on the call earlier, you learned that she's also a mother and definitely a busy lady. Today, Kelly's going to talk to us about the Rural Workforce Challenge, in things that she's seeing in the people she's employing and just the environment that she's working in. And then, as always, we'll have some time for some Q&A. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly.
Okay, awesome. Good morning, everyone. Oh, and I am the speaker who loves humans, so I'm sure Andrea feels the same. I get it. You guys are probably working or traveling, but if you'd like to turn your cameras on, that always gets me more excited. But yeah, so Andrea asked me to talk a little bit on workforce, which on kind of what's working, what's not, and I'll give you a little more background on obviously what we're up to and then I felt bad as I was putting some things together. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to do any good for these guys, but we'll find out because. So, back up a little bit. We bought Yellowstone River Beef, which is a USDA federally inspected beef plant located up in Williston. That is about an hour from our ranch. We live north of Watford City. So, it's about an hour drive from our place to get there. And it'll be 2 years the end of May since we bought that place. And people always ask me, number one, how's it going up there? And I joke, my new line that I've said lately is, hey, we're busy, but busy doesn't mean you're making any money. And they don't know if they should laugh or feel bad for me, but I'm like, yeah, it's just the reality sometimes of this industry. So, but then they always ask, like, what's hard right now? And before I can even answer it, they're often saying, employees, I'm guessing. Do you struggle with employees? And I think this is where probably my leadership and coaching comes into play. I'm like, well, that's all perspective, right? What you think is hard in your business or in the state or whatever. My husband would be the first to say employees are the biggest headache. That is his biggest struggle. That would be his answer. But I'm kind of like, I like people. I like working with them. I like trying to figure them out and what makes somebody come, what makes somebody stay, and all of those things. So we have right now, just up there at that location, around 10 employees. And thankfully, when we bought the place, it was up and going. And though we had a handful of employees there already, and some of them have been there for 20, 30 years, which many of you might know has its pros and cons, right? Then I've got somebody who has experience, especially in that specific industry. I don't know how to cut meat. That is not my gifting. If I cut myself, I'd be laying on the ground. But I know people, I know business, I know customers, right? I can do a lot of that stuff. And so trying to plan that all out and figure out even just how many people do we need? What does that look like? What positions do we need? Is there anything that needs to be tweaked or changed? So I was visiting so my husband and I own that place along with actually, if I look out my window and look far enough, our neighbors as well. So there's four of us owners, bought that place together. And I was texting them yesterday and telling them we were going to get on here and talk about um, recruiting employees, stuff like that. And nobody had much feedback, which is typically how text messages go. I don't know about you guys. But the one thing that we did, and not that I have great results from it whatsoever, but we did pay for ZipRecruiter for a little while. Anybody else ever used that or tried it? CJ said he thought it was very expensive. I mean, like maybe $750 a month or something. So paid a lot of money for that. And then he said, that's pretty much where I got all the people that I fired. So I think it can be really interesting, just the industry you're in, and all I can talk to is agriculture, for example. But also one of our other business owners at Yellowstone. He's done a lot in the oil field and stuff. And I was just talking to him about how it seems like everybody is looking for employees. I don't care if it's the gas station or the grocery store or an accounting firm, a bank, whatever. It seems like everybody's looking for employees. But then on the other side, I can look on social media sometimes on some of those lovely, like local town chat groups, on social media. I don't know what they look like in your guys' communities, but sometimes the nicest, kindest people aren't always the ones commenting on there. And they're like, well, I've applied at 20 different places and haven't gotten a call back. And sometimes I want to be like, well, Janet, what did your application look like? Right? Like, what was on your sheet? I mean, is there a reason they didn't follow up with you? Or are businesses really not following up like they should? So I'm in charge of the social media, which I should not. That is not my gifting. But it does all right. And sometimes I get a lot of views. So if you want to go follow Yellowstone River Beef, you can. But the problem is when those go viral sometimes, I will get messages. I am not even kidding. I started making a list of people from Egypt, the Philippines, Morocco, Peru, Argentina, all over the world that want to come work at my butcher shop. And I have found that very interesting and also sad. Some of the messages they will send, because I'll message, number one, I will message them all back because I think everybody deserves a response. So it kind of makes me mad when I hear that on Facebook that I applied to 10 different places in town and didn't hear one thing back. It's like, well, maybe your application didn't go through, right? Or maybe something went wrong, or the business is really not following up. But I will always respond to them like, hey, we're full right now. We don't have any openings. But for a couple of these out of country people that would respond literally just because they saw my reels, I would say, you would really come. I'm kind of like, do you know where Williston, North Dakota is? Like, you want to come here and work at a butcher shop? And you can maybe guess, or maybe you don't know if you haven't worked out of country, but most all of them say, we just want a better life for my family, at the short of it, which makes me want to employ all of them at my place. But I know that would take a lot of work. And how can I have somebody come to Williston and not know how that's going to quite play out and stuff? So long story short, I always say, I think the biggest picture is what's that culture? Like, how do I build that? Um, but that's the leadership person in me. That's what am I doing to make sure people want to come work for me? um, we thankfully have had almost all of our employees stay. Maybe one has left, or we have let them go up there at the beef plant, for example. And so I think that says something. What's the culture? What's the work environment like? And I'm talking about a beef plant, guys. That work is not for everybody up there. They're all cutting, butchering, labeling, packaging, and stuff. And so, what makes a person stay, and how am I playing a role in that? What am I giving them, even as far as training and stuff like that? Other people that have joined our team up there, we actually have 3 Cubans that have come to work for us and stuff. We've been very fortunate, and not everybody likes this answer, but word of mouth referrals is probably the biggest thing. When we first bought that place up there, a couple of the current employees said, hey, you should try and get Evan back. Evan used to work here. He's younger, he's really good, but he went to the oil fields. So of course we called Evan, being the new owners, and we're like, hey, would you, any interest? Would you ever come back here? And he was interested because he was sick of the oil field hours, right? And he's been with us now the last almost 2 years. And so I can't stress that enough. If the people, for us anyways, within our workplace that had connections, new people who are maybe working at another butcher shop or the grocery store, would they be interested? Are they the people that we want, and would they be interested in coming to work for us? Another thing that I thought would be a little bit interesting too, I have done 2 or 3 job fairs. And again, this is where it gets tricky because maybe people see different results. It could be we don't have a lot of people going into meat processing, is why I'm not finding them. But I got a lot of leads. But then my husband said, well, the one person that you found that came and worked for you was also one that we let go. So I didn't really get much credit there either. We let her go as well. So we just weren't finding the quality of people that we wanted and stuff, or people just not following through, which makes me want to go down the rabbit hole of, are we building leaders? What, to me, it doesn't always matter what age it is. It's the chicken or the egg. What are people being taught when it comes to how do we show up and work? So that's another loaded question. But even here on the ranch, I was going to talk briefly. Um, I can honestly say we have people, kids, knocking on our door that want to come work at our place for us. And I know that's because of my husband and because word of mouth, right? Kids enjoy coming to work at our place. My oldest is a freshman in high school. And I swear every week for the last few months, she comes home and she's like, Dad, Triton keeps asking, like, can he come work for you? Do you have anything for him to do? And so finally on Monday, President's Day, Watford didn't have any school. And so CJ's like, well, we could work some cattle here. We have a feedlot. And so he texted Triton. Triton happened to be staying at our neighbor's place who owns the butcher shop with us. And so both him and his buddy Jet came down and helped work 400 head of cattle. And I just think about like that situation. CJ has no trouble finding hired help on the ranch, which most people would have the thought, or maybe they just have the history of, it is so hard to find help on operations. And I disagree, but that's, my experience has been different because I think we've created it differently. Every summer, I mean, we've had 2 or 3 kids come help us. I could put out a list on Facebook right now and say, any kids want to come help us this weekend? And we'd have a ton of responses. Why? Because they enjoy it and it's a different experience for them. One of them comes out now kind of in the afternoons. It's not affiliated with the school, but it's kind of like a CWE program. He comes out, he's welding panels for us in the shop, or they work cattle, or they fence. We had, probably if you went to my Facebook page, there was 7, 8, 9 kids that came to fence a couple miles this past fall. I mean, and they have a heyday doing it. So they're learning a ton, but CJ is good at teaching them. Because I asked him, he said one time they were putting in a corner post or whatever, and he explained to them how to do it properly. He's like, then I left them to handle it. I came back and I just stood there and looked at it because they did it wrong. And I said, so what do you do? Like, did you yell at them, or you just get, I mean, that takes a lot of time. People have gone fencing before. He's like, no, but I stood there and I said, so do you guys remember when I said that you have to do it this way or whatever? And they all start arguing because the boys are all good friends. And they're like, we told Dylan that that was wrong. That's not how you're supposed to do it. And we tried to tell him. And so they all bickered for a while, but they redid that corner post and made it right and stuff. So I think they learn a lot and they just respect. There's a lot of respect for CJ, for example. And I think I have gotten that even when I go back and think about our employees at the beef plant. In fact, I will share this with you guys because I think it just speaks volumes to, and this is not to pat myself on the back, but I think it's when you have respect, when you have trust, when you know you can trust in your higher ups, your boss, or when, if you're that person, can they come to you? Can they confide in you? I'm big on, man, we work hard. I don't care if it's here at home or it's at the beef plant or whatever it might be, but I'm also know that they're humans, right? I do a lot in the mental health industry. And so I understand that. And I will say, I have employees that what they've experienced in life, I could never imagine things that they have done or tried or been through. And I realized that walking in there and stuff. And my birthday was on Saturday, and one of my employees texted me and she says, happy birthday, Calli. Thank you for always being kind, for genuinely caring about my well-being, and for making me feel valued. Your genuine care for me as a person instead of just an employee, and you giving me forgiveness and grace when I've screwed up, when you could have just fired me, has made a major impact on my sobriety journey and my life. I hope you have a wonderful birthday. And I think sometimes we overlook what some people might consider to be little things when it comes to, is that person going to stay working for me? Do I genuinely care about people? What's the work environment, right? What are they getting when they come to work for us? It's not just a paycheck. there's a lot more to it and stuff. So there's been beef plants closing across the country. I would love to get a high level manager out of Nebraska from Tyson or something like that. So I've gotten a couple emails on maybe a couple different opportunities of some ads that will be being put out there for North Dakota and stuff. But it's sometimes it's word of mouth is what I've realized, and it's a waiting game. But like I always say, God will feed the birds, but He doesn't drop the food in their nest. So they have to go out and look for it. And that's things that we've found that we have to do too, whether it's through conversation, putting some things out there, or just even having connections with other butcher shops across the state that I've got connections with, and seeing what might work for us. So just a little bit on our example, what we've experienced and how we're sitting right now, I guess. And I don't know if we open for questions, Andrea, if there's anything you have specifically that I didn't touch on either, or any of those stories that might be helpful for everyone on here.
Yeah, lots of great information. Before we move on to questions, do you have anything to share, like from a kind of a community perspective, and how Watford City has addressed workforce? I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but I know Watford City has some things going on. You touched on a CWE program before. I know Watford City has a CTE program. Do you have anything to add on that and how that's contributing to workforce in your area?
I think it has definitely changed. I don't know about you guys or where you grew up and what it looked like, but when I graduated high school, you talked about where you were going to your for your college next. Like that was just the plan. And I think that has shifted a lot in our area for sure, anyways, with the opportunities that kids have. In fact, some of you maybe heard, I think it was just this last May, there was two or three kids in Williston that graduated college before they graduated high school, with a certificate or something to head out into the workforce. And so there's a lot of opportunities now out in our area, even with the Basque, the Bakken Area Skills Center. And I think adults' eyes are opening with what opportunities are there for kids, because there's a lot that don't need or nor should they go to a 4-year school. It's not for them. Maybe a 2-year or maybe a certificate. There's just a lot of different unique opportunities, and some are going to head straight into workforce as well. And so between the Basque is doing a lot. If you haven't heard of that, Bakken Area Skills Center, and just what kids can be doing even while they're going to school or being able to head there for some classes and stuff. Like I said, my daughter's a freshman, and she emailed me yesterday and she said, "Hey, should I be taking some college credits? We're looking at classes for next year." And I'm like, "Oh, you guys are on the ball." I mean, maybe they're doing that at all the schools right now, but I mean, she's already talking about lining up her fall schedule and what college courses should she maybe be taking and stuff. And I think there is just this big input to give, or big idea of, let's give kids these opportunities to try things to get an idea of what they may like. For example, I got a little under the weather the last week, and so I finally went to the doctor yesterday, even though I'm much better. And sure enough, I go, and my nurse was a student at the high school. She runs cross country, and I was like, "Hey, Katie, how's it going?" And I always feel more bad for them. Like, is it awkward for them? It doesn't matter to me. And visiting with her, because that's what she's thinking about going to school for, is nursing and stuff. And here she was, the one doing all my vitals and everything when I went to the hospital. But just Watford is big on giving kids those opportunities to learn, to try to expose them to different things, so they're getting ideas of, hey, maybe this is what I want to do, or something that I might pursue even down the line. Even just, and I think Watford has always been forward thinking on that. For example, I have a big Live to Lead event that I put on with the John Maxwell team, one on Sunday, one on Monday. I open Monday up to all the students, like student council, FFA, leaders in sports and athletics. I invite them all, instead of just saying, "Hey, it's community leaders," which anybody in my mind is a leader, right? Sometimes we're the ones that don't define ourselves that way, but just including youth and so many of those things, I think help make an impact on just how they're thinking. Like, is this a place for me? Do I belong in this spot? And the things that they can take away from an opportunity or an event like that, we include them.
Yeah, thanks, Callie, for adding that. I think it's just a very interesting time in our environment and our workforce. As business owners, I think business owners are used to competing for customers, but now they're competing for employees. And so it's kind of maybe, I know you talked about maybe just having a different mindset about approaching things and how things are going. And so I heard you talk a lot about some what I would call soft skills, like building that trust and those connections. Can you elaborate a little bit on maybe some specifics that you focus on that help make that happen?
Mhm. I think a big part, if you went up and asked my Yellowstone crew right now, what would have solved this problem or what would have prevented this issue, you guys could probably all guess what they would say, even yourselves, maybe. Think about what you would say, right? Like what would have prevented this problem? Communication. I say that to them all the time. I mean, if something, an order got messed up or something didn't get written down, or all you had to do was tell this person or write it down or share it. So that's what I do all day long too, is communicate. But I do stress that a lot, of just the power in communication. And even with kids, my own kids probably get sick of it, even when it's little things of, I tell them, like, you need to slow down and speak clearer because I am not following your story. Probably doesn't help. They use a lot of other jargon and stuff nowadays, but and so I stress just that communication and customer service too. I've had some big companies even reach out and say, "Hey, can you do a training on this?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not saying I'm like trained or skilled in this, but I think once you learn how to work with humans, as simple as that sounds, it can take you 10 times further." I do disc training, for example, if you've ever done that before, DISC. It's like a behavioral study, trying to understand how can we communicate better? How do we understand different behavioral styles? So even if I know how I'm wired and how I show up and how I like to get things done, I'm a little more bold or straightforward. I might have an employee who's pretty quiet, or who is very detailed. So I might need to have a different conversation with them. I mean, there's just so much that can be learned when it comes to those communication styles. And so I think we try to stress some of that, even when I'm working with kids and teaching them those things, which is a lot of probably what I'm called into, and even just the mindset of stuff. I stress that a lot, even as a leadership and mindset coach of, okay, this is what happened. And now how do we want to handle it? And my employees probably get sick of that, but something could be, I mean, maybe not physically on fire, but seem like it's on fire at the beef plant. And that has happened where they come through the door and they're like, well, this is what just happened. And I'm like, and okay, that is what happened. Now, how do we want to show up? Like, let's just figure it out. Everything is figure outable. I can let it totally ruin my day and think this is the worst situation ever. And does it suck? Yeah, there's some hard things. There's some not good things that happen. Okay. In life. I mean, this is what I teach though. And how do I want to show up to it? How do I want to handle the situation so that I can teach people and they can learn from it? Because that makes a huge impact on how's the rest of our day going to go? What's the morale of the rest of the team if this is how you're going to storm in and think that because something broke, our day is ruined? So I think there's just a lot of mindset, even mental health, leadership stuff that is tied into all of that. I even too, I should add, we do quite a few tours at the beef plant. And so we have had Williston State College agricultural students stop in there a handful of times. So tour at the beef plant, but she also brought one of her classes out to the ranch as well, to the feedlot. And one of the gals actually ended up emailing me a couple months later. And she said, "Hey, would you guys have any openings for me at the beef plant? I play volleyball, but that's about done. I could work these hours and days." And as much as I would have loved to have had her, she unfortunately would have been leaving in May already and wouldn't be able to come back in the fall. So, you got to weigh, like, is it worth the investment and stuff? We also spoke one time in Williston. They do a what's it called? Brew your business, where a local business comes and talks about some of the challenges they're facing, just about business and stuff. And some of the high school students come to that. And after we got done speaking with that, one of the kids, I mean, it was probably a month or two later, he reached out and wanted a job. And I told CJ, I said, you better have said yes to him, not even knowing who it was. But I'm like, hey, if a kid attends an event and is looking for a job and reaches out and everything, like I'm always willing to give somebody a shot and an opportunity. So he was with us for a handful of months, and then people eventually have to learn work ethic, and if they don't, then they don't, and then they got to learn the next step in life. So but yeah, I think that, like I said, it's not always those online things that get us the most finds. We can maybe find them, but it's not always the quality people that we want. And so just putting yourself out there too in some of those right meetings or events can make a big difference, because I would say, who do you know that I should know one way or another in one of my businesses? I bet you know somebody that would be a good connection for one reason or another.
Thanks. Does anyone have any questions? You can unmute and ask them or type in the chat as well. Everyone's quiet today. So I was going to ask you if you offer any internships. I know that's something that we talked a little bit about the CTE programs, and some businesses offering internships can be a way to recruit people as well.
Yeah, we don't technically offer an internship, but I mean, if a kid wanted to come work, and the struggle actually, which a lot of people don't know, is you have to be 18 or older even to work there, let alone even to be on the cutting floor. There's a lot of rules and stuff because we are USDA and stuff. So that's where we are limited as well to who we can hire at ours specifically.
I think one of the things that's interesting to me too is when we talk about workforce, I think one of the first things that comes to mind or comes up in the discussion is that, in order to recruit a workforce and keep them, you have to pay the most money. And I don't think you haven't mentioned salaries at all or wages. And I think that's the thing that gets overlooked, um, is that's the easy fix, is to pay more money. And the harder long-term fix is to work on building those relationships. And it can seem very overwhelming. But it's modeling the way. It's when people walk in the door asking them how their day was and truly caring how their day was. And I think in the environment we're in now, for the most part, people want to work in a place where they feel respected. You talked a lot about trust. There's always that balance when you're the owner and the manager, but giving people, showing them that you trust in their abilities, and that if they do make a mistake, you talked about that. How you handle that sets the tone for how they handle those situations when they're dealing with customers moving forward. So I think when we talk about workforce and the workforce challenges, the big picture is we have more jobs than we have people. We just need more money. And I think really what you've hit on today is it's a lot more than that. We need to look at how we're treating people and how we're training people. Are we giving them the right tools to do their jobs? That's one thing that comes up a lot is there's no training for employees lots of times. And so businesses just need to look at their model and look at the return on investment in training time. And maybe it's offering professional development for their employees, or some, it could be soft skills, or it could be skills specific to the trade or the industry. And also, I think a term I hear a lot is grow your own. And so we look at that from a community perspective. We want to build our own workforce within our community. But I think there's a lot of opportunity in businesses, individual businesses too. You talk about finding a manager, and sometimes you can train those people. to fill some of those roles. And so I don't have a magic bullet for the workforce challenge. I don't know that anybody does. Um, but I think that sometimes maybe we overthink the simple things when it comes to it. Like you said, it comes down to people and managing people and building those relationships. And it sounds really easy to do, but we all know that it's not.
Mhm. That's what I was just thinking. That's why nobody had questions because they're thinking, well, she didn't solve any of our problems. So we all still have the same problem. But I think about salary a bit though. I have a friend in Montana, in Glendive, Montana, so not that far from us, who owns a butcher shop. And I remembered asking her, like, will you share? What do you pay your manager? And it was wildly less than what we even come close to paying our regular employees. So, I mean, I can tell you it does not help. We live in an oil boom. It doesn't matter if you work the oil field or not, right? Prices are high no matter where. But am I paying? Well, some are getting oil field wages, but when we asked, right, Evan to come back from the oil field, he was sick of the hours, right? He wanted to come back to. I've had a handful of employees say, like, this is our family. And you have to build that culture. But I think so much of that starts with whoever leads the group. If that's you, the person that's on here, is leading by example. And I try hard to do that, CJ. And I mean, if you've seen some of our videos, I mean, we put in the sweat equity one way or another. We'll take the garbage out, we'll fix the thing. They watch how they learn from me, right? If I'm running the till that day and I'm helping a customer or I'm helping load out somebody else, or just in how I communicate with them, is an example of how I expect them to talk to and treat our customers. I do that with my kids too, you guys. It's not just when you're at work, it is when you're behind the scenes too. When you're on the phone or when you are on social media, whatever it is, I always say more is caught than is taught. I mean, I don't care if it's your employees or your coworkers or your kids, they're watching how you talk on the phone when a situation doesn't go well, how you work with your spouse, how you talk to a school administrator, or what you do during a basketball game. I'm just very big on that more is caught than is, or more is caught than is caught, right? They're watching what you say, but then they're watching if you live it out yourself too and stuff. So I think about that a lot, and my employees, I go back to that birthday text because they're not always the best at saying thank you. Even when we gave them all Christmas gifts, I honestly don't think I heard one thank you, which is okay. I know they appreciate it. They all wear their beanies when they're cutting meat and everything and stuff. But when I got that text, it's kind of like your kids. You can tell them and tell them and tell them. And it's like, are you getting anything from this? So when I got that text, I was like, okay, I may not enjoy every day or running a beef plant and stuff, but I think, what's my mission? It's to help. I love people. I love my Maxwell business, my coaching, my speaking, my training. So if that's what I get to do is some of that up there and live out my mental health training that I have taught and stuff, that's what I'm supposed to be doing right now and making that impact. And I know what pays off in the long run.
Andrea,
Mhm.
this is Keith. I just wanted to what Callie was driving. It seems like the conversations we have with younger people is that quality of life work balance is a big issue for. I mean, it used to be where the work part and quality of life issue wasn't yet really a discussion point, and I think that's one thing that we're seeing, even on the state level of trying to not only get people but retain them, and that's something that because you hit on wages and stuff like that, and we've looked at like our benefits. Younger people don't put as much emphasis on that. I mean, it's a component, but to get them here isn't that isn't their driving force. There's the wage issue, of course, but then the quality of their work play. I call it play, but it's, I mean, they call it quality of life, but that's what it is. I mean, and you see that a lot. It doesn't matter what profession you're in anymore. It seems like if there isn't a balance there, or there isn't that ability to enjoy the life part of it, they usually don't stay around and stuff on it. I just comments. I just was, yeah, as I was listening to you, Callie.
Mhm.
Yes, excellent point, Keith. Yes, very much so. And that makes it a, a a competition amongst communities too. What communities are offering the best quality of life and have those amenities that people need. But that's, yeah, definitely an excellent point.
And I think about that too myself. Our manager, for example, has a young girl, and um, she always asks. She never tells us, but she'll text us and say, "Hey, my daughter's got a program at 2 o'clock, or whatever it might be. Can I go to that?" And I'm like, if my child had a program at 2 o'clock, but this is a value and priority to me. This is a whole nother thing I teach though, too, in my leadership stuff is if you don't know your values and priorities, you're going to live somebody else's. And so I know what matters to me. I'm not missing that program if my daughter had it. And so why would I make it any different for my employee, right? Unless there's some just major reason she can't be gone. And I think that's the thing, and maybe that's me not knowing enough about running business or employees either, but it's like I just do what I think is right, and what they would appreciate. So and,
Absolutely.
and like Andrea was saying, I think about the community very much so too. Williston has a lot more than they used to. Watford is home for me, so I love Watford and all the opportunities. I mean, I sit on the JDA, EDC, just a lot of different boards, and I think of how much Watford City has changed and just the amount of marketing that they do now to recruit some of the top physicians in the country, and what can we sell them on here in our community, from the youth opportunities, the hospital, the schools, the rec centers, the ag expos. And I get that we've gotten that right because of some oil money and stuff, but it's what are the other reasons too that might draw some people, but what's the work life balance, so they say, look like for them. So I was going to look at this other one that came in
Yeah,
here.
there's a comment in the chat. I'll let you read that.
I don't even know if there's lacking leadership training. Um, I don't know who asked that. That could be somebody who's 80 years old too, and now you're really trying to put me in a corner here.
And that was me. I'm putting pressure on older folks because I get jumped into that younger generation and I'm almost 30, and I'm like, you guys have to stop telling me that my generation doesn't like to work.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of something that's plastered on these younger kids, even if they are working, or, it's a stigma that we continue to hear, but I'm not actually seeing that or hearing that from you. So I found that interesting. Like, what can we be doing better as leaders and business owners, and take our part instead of just blaming the youth that they don't like to work?
Because I hear that a lot. And honestly, it bothers me as well because now I'm closer to 40 almost, but I hear it a lot. And then go back to the story I just told. I have kids knocking on our door to come work on our place. So why is that, right? Is it the environment? Is it the people? Is it the experience? Is it because work can actually be fun? I mean, there's so many things I think that tie into it. Do I think there are plenty? I said this earlier and I didn't really dive into it, but it's like the chicken or the egg. What are they being taught? That, yep, I work my 8 to 5 and I call it good. You know what I mean? I mean, what are they learning from their parents? What are you learning from the generation before you when it comes to work? The good and the bad.
Mhm.
The, I don't know if I want to say this is the worst part, but in coaching, that's what I get to teach is we have we have manuals for people and how we think that they should show up and how they should work and how they should live their life and all these things, but you don't get to give it to people. And so we all have these thoughts on what it means to be a good employee or be a good boss or be a good husband or wife, but somebody else might have a completely different view. But yet I think there's some fine lines. And I don't know if you guys ever saw it. It was a few months ago it came out. I think it was the Ford truck ads. And I just caught notice of it because people are always like, work smarter, not harder. And maybe this is how I was brought up in agriculture. I know what the generations did before me, but I'm like, why not? The truck ads were saying, why not work smarter and harder? Like, what's wrong with that? And I think sometimes we push too much. And hear me out on this, people, because I do mental health first aid training. But I think there's a fine line between what people are being taught of, oh, self-care. I hear one end of go take care of yourself, relax, all these self-soothing things. And then I'll hear the other end of like grind it out, hammer harder, keep working. And it's like, so what is it for you? Like, how can I do both? And that is something I teach my coaching clients of like, what if it can be both? What if I can work my tail off? Which I will be. I speak in Iowa this week. I run 2 Live to Lead events. I speak next week. And then, like Keith said, I'm going to play. I'm taking the whole crew, family down to Arizona for a few days to have some fun, right? But man, I've worked hard and I've tried to work smart to figure that all out. And I think if nobody's being taught that, then they think they haven't learned it. I mean, I am talking younger kids right now. I think about some of the kids that come to our ranch, don't always have a lot of guidance. Maybe they've experienced some things in life, could be even parents are divorced, they've been in trouble in school, there's maybe some abuse issues, whatever it might be, substance abuse. And I get the opportunity to show them some other perspectives, really, of what life can look like, how you can show up, why it matters, how we appreciate you and stuff. So I think a lot of that is taught when they're watched, when they're spending time with influential, positive, respected mentors. Kids can take a lot away from that, but they have to be given the opportunities too. If they're not given those opportunities to learn those things and to work, they might not ever do it then. Then we have a generation that just doesn't want to work like we think they should.
Yeah, I think that's that we could talk a days for about the differences in generations and perspectives and but great points, great discussion. I'm going to post Calli's website in the chat here in case anyone wants to learn more about Calli or contact her after the call. With that, I think I'll call for questions one more time, and then it looks like we've got about a minute left on our time today. But if you guys have any other questions, feel free to either share them with me or Calli. I think this is a discussion that could go on for hours probably, and it's not the last time we're going to talk about it here. As a regional council, will definitely be something that we're keeping tabs on as we move forward. Um, so if there are no other questions, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today, taking the time to be here, especially Calli. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to share some perspectives on work and keeping a workforce. Our next call will be on March 18th. We'll be on Zoom again, and that is collaboration over competition. And we'll be talking about sharing different resources and working together more on an expanded level. So thank you for that. One more call for questions. Calli, any final thoughts?
No, but now I sit and think myself all day long and now I'm going to ponder Jenny's question and everybody else says. No, it's fun to think about and stuff and ponder and have conversations about, right? What's working for one place, where we may be struggling, where could we improve? And I'm big on the people's side of stuff, and so that's what I think about and consider a lot what we're doing up there. So
Okay. Well, thanks again for your time. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your day and stay safe out there.